everyone. Welcome back to our Women's Space channel, a sacred sisterhood and community where we support and dive into deep, creative, and explorative topics that pique your curiosity about your feminine. Today, Marcy and I are super excited to have a very special and truly amazing guest joining us, Wendy Interview. Wendy is a licensed clinical professional counselor, clinical alcohol and drug counselor, national certified counselor, certified integrative body psychotherapy practitioner, as well as a teacher with expertise in depression, anxiety, addictions, life transitions, stress management, and life coaching. You all are definitely in for a treat. She will be sharing her expertise in this area and some fascinating insights, reflection on that. So let's dive right in, and I will go ahead and hand the stage over to Marcy.
Hey, great. So Wendy, our first question is, what brought you to this work? How did you originally come into this? What piqued your curiosity?
So I feel like that there's kind of two parts to that. This work being a therapist, pretty much that was being drawn by my own pain, my own journey. I feel like most people who are drawn to healing come from exploring their own pain. But then there's the this work being the what I feel like is quite different than the traditional therapy world. This work being actual healing that came from the recognition that what I was taught in traditional therapy was not really useful, at least not for transformation and healing and freedom, which is what I am actually interested in, not just not being in pain, but really opening up to our true nature, our true potential.
Thank you so much for sharing that. One of our questions kind of goes into the difference of somatic work and how it relates to your therapy. Can you go in a little bit deeper around that?
Sure. So this difference between traditional talk therapy and actual healing, awakening, self-actualization, whatever term we want to use. Somatic is a way to approach that. That's what I was first interested in. Okay, this just talking about shit isn't really doing it. We have to get deeper. We have to get to something more. And I explored various kind of paths to try to find out about that, hypnosis, EFT tapping. And I just happened to get introduced to somatic therapy through my supervisor, who was doing this training program in Integrative Body Psychotherapy. And I realized when we're working with the body, it's really about working with the whole person, because we don't live as an ego identity, as thoughts in our head are. Life is an embodied experience, right? So all somatic approaches really just mean that we recognize that we are a mind-body system, that we can't look at just the story or just the logical part of us. We have to recognize we are a mind, body, spirit system, actually. So working through the body is just a way to access the actual person rather than the ego identity, how we think about ourselves.
Yeah. Do you think, I'm going to kind of go a little deeper into this, Wendy, because I find it fascinating. Do you feel like there is an age or kind of a bracket when people kind of realize there's more than just their mind and they kind of come into their bodies? Have you seen anything in your work around that?
I don't believe that there is an age. I think many people go through their entire lives without recognizing that they are more than their thoughts. Just by virtue of the society that we happen to be plopped into, it seems to me it's more it takes something to get us to go, oh, wait a minute, because the whole world, what's being mirrored to us in society is just that. You're just your thoughts, and it's what's on the surface. Like one of the books I like a lot is The Four Agreements. Are you familiar?
Yeah,
So
very.
it's, here's what the society we're plopped into. And another one I like, The Way of Integrity, Martha Beck, she talks about the same theme. Like, so much of what we believe and the way we understand ourselves just comes from what's mirrored to us by the society that we live in. So I don't feel like there's an age. I feel like some of us are going to have experiences or come to a certain place where we recognize, and actually, as I'm talking about this, I'm going to contradict myself, which I do a lot.
It's quite all right.
As children, we already know this. So if we're talking about ages, we come into the world knowing that, and then we're actually taught that it's bullshit, and we doubt ourselves. So is there an age where we remember or reconnect with? If from my perspective, it just seems like not necessarily random, but certainly not something I'm in charge of.
Thanks for going down that. And I think that is a beautiful realization of, like, we come in as children very clean and pure and holistic. And then as we age, we kind of are like this rock that collects some crud that we have to then clean off and examine and figure out if this is ours or not. So it's really beautiful.
Children, I mean, we know, like, how could we not? Although sometimes it starts to get interrupted very, very early, even before birth, even before we take our first breath, where we're already getting this messaging in the womb, right? That how welcomed are we in the world? How safe are we? And it's that defensiveness, that unsafety that starts to close us in, that starts to disconnect us from being able to recognize the truth of our nature.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the womb space. We do a lot of work around the womb, and with me and Danny and our collective, and it's one of those safe spaces where a lot of people don't really even think about how they feel within their womb or how they felt originally in the womb. And our society isn't built upon this safe structure as of now. It's getting better, to really take time to think in, like, did I want to be born? Was this something I wanted? And how do I feel? And, like, oh, the space within my body, and, like, reclaiming it. And I love that you brought that up, because it's true. Like, there's this whole area within ourselves that is ripe for exploration.
Indeed. And this is something, like, my experience in the womb was something I had been taught didn't matter. And I believed that for a long time in my life, going back to this, my original pain or whatever. I never imagined that what I experienced in my mother's womb, who I'm adopted, my birth mother was 15 when she was pregnant with me. And I spent most of my life believing that couldn't have affected me, even though I had dreams that I now believe were like her dreams. When I was a teenager, I would have dreams about being pregnant and being terrified, and this feeling of just, this is awful, and the shame. And I feel like that's what was being transmitted to me as that growing baby through her fear. So, but again, and I'm old, right? How old am I? I'm 56. So as I'm growing up, it wasn't really understood the way that it is now, and starting to be more and more like, oh, this is development. Like, this is physiological. We are adapting from before we're born through our entire lives. Our brains are changing. Our nervous systems are changing. And so it's so exciting. I'm so, like, happy that this is changing, that the womb space is recognized as something so important.
It's interesting because they're, like you said, like, having those memories, having these dreams that are transferred from people we may have not have even known, but they feel so viscerally real, and it makes us, realize like energy is energy, like transference. And it's really exciting. Like you said, it's like a little bread trail back to your healing, like your original healing space. So amazing. Thank you for sharing, Wendy, and being very authentic. Like, it's a space here that it really helps others to hear other people's stories. And I really appreciate you feeling safe to open up.
Oh, I'm glad that belongs here. That's
absolutely. So we kind of dabbled a little bit on that mind-body connection. We've gone a little bit deeper. And I want to ask you, is there anything else within the mind-body connection that you're feeling like now more than ever that you were really excited about? Like something that you're just like, I can't wait. I'm sharing this with my client space, that you'd like to share with our audience.
Just that, and I think this ties into your earlier question, just that to me, it's profound just to make the shift to recognize I am an embodied being, to recognize, at least that's my experience working with many people, is this sort of incredulous reaction to, well, what are you experiencing in your body, or what's it like being in your body right now, to this, like, what the fuck are you talking about? I had no idea that I could exist in my body. I don't even know what that means. So, and I know that seems pretty simple, but to me, it's a very big deal. And when I think about my own journey, it was a big deal to me as well. So I was very much someone who lived in my head and thought that this was all kind of woo-woo and weird. And the difference of just that simple shift to recognize, like, I can experiencing myself as an embodied being, that's huge to me and really exciting.
That's cool. With that, I think like disassociation is something that's very natural for a lot of us. And I think from what I'm hearing you say, that permission to be in our bodies, I feel like that's an interesting space of somebody who has had a lot of physical trauma, where it may not have felt safe, to now having that permission to be in our body and like take, full ownership of, this is my body. It feels good, bad, ugly. Here it is, Is there any advice that you would have for somebody who may kind of be in that disassociated space a little bit more than not?
So that's such a great point, right? It's cultivating the safety to be in your body. I think there's not being in the body just because we're not taught that we're embodied beings. We're taught that we are like, it's mind over matter. Like our body is something to be like subjugated almost by the mind. I just have to concentrate to make my body do what I want it to. I being my thoughts, or this, thing in my head that's just pulling these levers. And then there's this other layer that has to do with trauma and unsafety. That is, we aren't in our bodies because it feels safe to be present in the body. So advice, I guess, and this is really how I see this whole healing process, to cultivate the safety to be present with my experience as it is. And then how I support that safety is really the same as bringing in what's needed for healing. If it's really, like we talked about, the natural state of wholeness and understanding that we just have from coming into the world, basically, is this wholeness that gets interrupted. trauma is what interrupts that. At least my definition of trauma, how our body adapts to threat, how our mind-body system adapts to threat over the lifetime. So rather than forcing the presence to honor that place where it feels difficult, not, okay, you got to be in your body and be in your body. Like, wow, what is it like being in your body, and where does it feel uncomfortable? And how old is that feeling of, oh, this doesn't feel okay? The mechanism by which we cultivate that safety is care, connection, acceptance. And that is how we expand that container for safety, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you. I love how you had mentioned how old is it? How long is it? Yeah. What age is it? Because sometimes it feels like it's been there forever, and we don't even ask that question, it's just there. So that's a beautiful way of bringing ourselves into a little more identity to when this happened, how it started, and just to start getting a little more curious within our inner self.
Right. Which is also where the body part comes in, right? I can't, how old is this in my head is very different than, oh, how old does this feel in my body? Where is it being held? And how is that familiar? Like that's a body exploration, not a mental one, at least in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I wanted to get in, this is really exciting work, the psychedelic assisted therapy, which is really big right now. Can you share a little bit and your professional opinion, your expertise kind of about these topics?
Sure. So ketamine is the only substance with psychedelic properties that is currently, at least on a national level, available to be used legally. So that is the one I have more direct experience with. Although I have done the MDMA assisted therapy training in anticipation of the approval that was hopefully going to happen over this past summer, but unfortunately did not, despite the 3 rounds of really impressive clinical trials showing all of this exciting promise. But for me, one of the most interesting things about psychedelic assisted therapy is that even looking at substances with very, very different mechanisms of action, like MDMA, ketamine, psilocybin, very different mechanisms of action, but really similar experiential sorts of results, right? The expansion of consciousness that seems to bring about less fear of dying, for example, or it really is about cultivating more flexibility over rigidity, and that all of these substances, all of these medicines seem to do that, even though they work on the brain and body very differently. Like, that's so interesting to me. And so the process is just the process. Can we get access to the painful places or the places where our limitations got set up? Can we cultivate enough safety to be present with them? And then can we bring in what's needed for the expansion, the change? And psychedelic medicines seem to have this, seem to be quite a reliable and accessible way to have that. There are other ways. Like, one of the tools in integrative body psychotherapy is breath work. We might use a hyperventilative type of breath, use movement. And there's many ways to cultivate non-ordinary states of consciousness, because that's really in our ordinary state of consciousness, that default mode network, that prefrontal cortex, it's so in the way, it limits us so much. So there's lots of ways to shift that, but psychedelic medicine seem to be one of the most reliable and efficient ways to do that. And also I'm glad you used that term, psychedelic assisted therapy, because to me, that's the thing, to see these medicines as a tool in the context of therapy and not as a substitute, or just to recognize how the medicines work in that whole context of healing. So if we don't have that safety, then it can be very overwhelming. It can be very unsettling. This made me think of, I'm also certified in EMDR, and that's another way that people sometimes can get overwhelmed. You know, you're digging into these neural networks and uncovering stuff, and it can be too much for the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I like, that's the attention to that in psychedelic work is to me really important. So ketamine, like the ketamine work that I get to be involved in, where it is in the context of therapy, and I get to be present with someone who has, you know, I don't get to do the injection, but the doctor does the injection. I get to be present with the person, versus someone going to a clinic and just getting an IV and being stuck in a room. I'm much more interested in the therapeutic use than just having the medicine do its thing.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense too. Is like, I think that's the change of the assisted therapy, right? From, and, you know, growing up younger and, you know, being able to access different psychedelics just on the street, and then like not having that therapy or that ability to download with somebody. I think I feel really blessed to be in the generation that we are right now, because there is so much more access to be able to process some of these bigger realities, or, you know, being able to understand like, wow, something big happened and I need somebody to talk to about it. And it's now a safer place for people to not get judged or made to feel like an addict, or, you know, what's wrong with you? Why do you need this? You know, it's like a very loving and like embracing community. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah. That the integration part, and like you said, like not to have shame around it, and to be able. So I think the thing about the medicines on their own, I think people can have really big and amazing transformative experiences, but also then just discount it, like, oh, well, I was just tripping, and that was just, you know, well, that was a cool trip, but not to really integrate it to like, wow, that was a peek into something that is like profound and real and meaningful. And that's what that community that you talked about, like, that makes that possible. Like, I can actually make sense of that in a way that's present in my day-to-day life, not just something that happens over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that, because I feel like we are in a boxed up world, you know, and it's like being able to now like open up all these doors and have everything start to meld together, and not have that shame or that guilt or that like embarrassment of like, I had this experience and now it's exciting. So thank you so much, Wendy. The work you're doing is phenomenal. So thank you. I want to kind of shift gears a little bit to a different topic. This is one that I think a lot of us as women feel a lot of shame and guilt around, and a lot of confusion. And I just wanted to know if you could give us any insights on women and kind of when they have emotional shifts during their premenstrual and their menstruation cycles, if there's any kind of insight that you've had with your work around, you know, what's happening with that? What is going on there?
What's going on? Do you mean with the way that women are shamed for their like natural shifts in how like their hormonal shifts, or?
Yeah, like hormonal shifts, like it's always kind of a joke is like, it's coming once a month, things are going to be different, and then it's always a surprise, and it's like you have like this thing where it's like, okay, my moods are like this, and then all of a sudden you kind of drop and start to have some emotional swings. And is there any kind of insight you can give to our viewers kind of to kind of explain things or give us any insights on like what's happening within our bodies, why it's going this way?
Well, I don't know that I can give a really great answer for that. I do know that when we are able to relate with our inner experience, including our emotional experience, including our moods, whatever it is, when we're able to relate with all of that in a way that is loving, in a way that is not taking it all super literally, then we can move through those experiences. So, when I work with a lot of men as well. I mean, in general, more women go to therapy, but I feel like I work with more men than a lot of therapists do. I like working with men too. When I think about women clients who will come in and recognize like, oh, I know that I'm going to feel this way because it's this part in my cycle. And when they're able to not take it, like this is part of my experience, but it's not all of my experience. Similar to any other aspect of our lives, actually, like our trauma story, for example, when we can relate with that and honor it as real, but also have it be in perspective. Like this is a part of my experience. I don't love this part of my experience, but also it doesn't define me. Then there's a lot more freedom around it to just move through it. Not to power through. Because I think, honestly, I think men have cycles as well. Maybe not in the same, I mean, it's different. I also believe that we all have masculine and feminine energy, the anima, animus kind of thing. We all have both energies. At least that's what I believe. So honoring all of our experience, making room for it, and not getting so caught in the why. And I guess this is to your, why is this happening? Why? The more I'm caught in why is this happening? Why? The more power it's getting. So I go, oh, this is happening. This is happening. And if like that, oh, this is at this point in my cycle, this is kind of what I experience. And like, that's all the why that I need. Then I get a little bit of freedom. I don't know if that's a helpful answer or not, but that's the way I see it.
Yeah, it's extremely helpful. I love that idea of like not giving it the power, right? Like there is a lot of charge, a lot of trigger behind like, oh my gosh, I'm being overly emotional, or how am I going to react to that? And it's like, well, I just did. Oh well. Oh well, here we go.
I'm super emotional right now, and that's just where I am right now, and that's okay. Acceptance, right? I feel like acceptance is key to so much of our process, and it's a big challenge. As much as, oh yes, I want to accept, but there's so many factors and so much of our fear responses and threat responses that get in the way. I need to fix this. I need to figure it out.
Yeah. So just coming back to this is just happening. This is just that moment right now.
Can I be present with my experience as it is? And how do I best support my well-being? Right? That's it. What am I experiencing right now? Do I have access to enough safety to be present with it? How do I best support my well-being?
Okay, that's
both inside and outside too. Like I'm Maybe I'm
Yeah.
rambling too much now, but how do I support my well-being, both with the actions that I take in the world? Who do I turn to for support? Right. I think the space that the two of you are providing is an example of that, right? Like, where can I get the support? Where can I feel not alone in this? What if I take a walk, does that help me? If I lay in bed curled up, does that help? Like, how do I support myself in my actions? And also, how do I support myself with how I relate to my experience on the inside? Can I bring a kind and loving, curious attention to my experience as it is? Or am I subtly judging or fighting with myself on the inside? So how do I support my well-being as both inside and out in the world?
Okay, I love that too. Like, yeah, how am I supporting myself inside and how am I supporting myself outside? And something I heard you say too is like, how am I, like, am I harming myself around it? Am I shaming myself around? Am I guilting myself around needing extra support or needing that extra rest or that reprieve or, an extra snack? Oh, I love this. Wendy, something I heard you touch on was cycles. And the reality is, like, men go through cycles, women go through cycles. And I just wanted to, if there was any kind of more you'd want to go into about that, like the cyclical, like, stages that we go into, and if there's anything you'd want to share.
That's a huge topic.
You can always go into it at another time too.
Yeah, I can. I'm cycles. I don't even know where to start with that.
We'll dig in another day.
Yeah.
I was just like, I was like a word, and I was like, oh, that is something that I would love to know more about. So yeah, another time we'll dig in.
All right.
So one question we have for you is, if you could go back to a time with your younger self, to little Wendy, is there any advice that you would have for her that you would like to share?
I talk to little Wendy all the time. Advice. I don't know. I have feelings about that word advice. I want to advise her. Like, what I want her to know always is that acceptance part. Like, you're okay just as you are. Like, I know that you don't feel like you're okay as you are, but you're enough. That's what I really want her to know. That's what why I talk to her all the time in an ongoing way. I talk to my future self too. But I also remember the first time that I was invited by my therapist, my Integrative Body Psychotherapist. Part of the training was we had to do 100 hours of our own therapy in this modality. And at that time, I really didn't think I needed therapy. I thought I had all my shit together. And I remember the first time that my therapist said, well, can you see that little Wendy? And I was like, fuck no, I don't want to talk to that little Wendy. It was really difficult. And I want to share that to validate, because I think there are a lot of people who have that experience. At least in people that I work with, I've seen that kind of a lot. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like, talk to that little girl part. It's hard. It can be really hard to soften towards the little girl aspects of ourselves. And I guess sometimes I think about what would have been different if I had known, oh yeah, you're already enough. much younger and how different my life would have been.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. But there is a part of me that's like, oh, that could have been so different. And all of the things that were painful and difficult, like, would have totally been different if I simply had known that I was already enough.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Thank you for sharing about that. And also, I love the future self. Well, we are going to visit her in a few more questions down in just a few minutes. I want to just make like a little personal comment that enoughness, that little girl voyage, it is something I know for me that has also changed my life, is being able to go in and like not only just talk to her, but be with her and like recognize her and like validate her. And it is a process, and it is a journey within, and like kind of cobwebs, and it's a really sacred journey. And I just love that you shared that one with us about she is enough, you are enough.
Yeah.
I have a little girl, and I try to tell her all the time, like, that you're enough, and it kind of stops her in her tracks. We kind of take that for granted sometimes when we're going through our daily day, like, it's just validating ourselves as well, and then also validating the people around us is like, you are enough, and it's like, wait, why are you telling me this? It's like, well, and I see it in her, she kind of gets this like am I? It's like, it is something it doesn't happen a lot, like in the physical, and to just say it to each other and to the people we love. So thank you.
What a gift for your daughter to have a mom who can communicate that, not just with words, but with just your energetic presence and being able to see her, because it is the energy behind the words, right? It's just the recognition of it's so obvious that you're enough, and I want to mirror that to you. And that's, what so many of us didn't get.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel personally it took me a lot to get to that point, to say it within my own work. And also, it's like, it is easy for us just to like sweep things along and do our own inner work, but not bring it out into the world. And that I think that's really where we are on this precipice of change, is like, how can we make it more common amidst our community, amidst ourselves and each other? And
yeah, and recognize we are all in this together, that there is, it's, that cliche, right? Be the change you want to see. Our inner work is the work of the world. Our inner work is the recognition of our interconnectedness, that you are me and I am you, and we are one, and we're all aspects of this same. We just don't notice it all the time, or remember to notice it.
Absolutely. It's interesting because it's making me feel into that piece you said of recognizing the discomfort, or recognizing like going into your body when you are uncomfortable, and it's like not repressing it so it turns into something else, or finding the why, just being like, I am uncomfortable with my emotions right now, or I'm uncomfortable with communicating this love that I have for you, or just feeling sticky in a situation. It's like, I think we're all figuring out how to be in that discomfort without moving into, needing to numb. It's exciting.
Very. And the vulnerability, right? To be able to show that, to be able to share, like, wow, this discomfort is coming up, and can I allow you to see my discomfort?
Yes. Yeah. And not feel threatened by it, but feel empowered in it. It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
With that, do you believe that that trauma is on the rise, that there's more trauma in the world than there has been?
I don't. I think maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but I think the world has always been fucked up, and we have immediate access to how fucked up it is right now in, real time streaming. Let's see all of this everywhere, and how, but I really don't believe that it's more. Perspective is everything. When people are like, oh, this is, things are so much more messed up, and like, no, they're not more messed up. We just have more access to seeing how messed up it is outside of our own little individual, where I can pretend, no, everything's fine. Like, oh, this is the worst it's ever been in the world. I always think, like, really? Like, can we think about the Holocaust? Can we think about, like, many times in history, famines and the other wars and the Crusades, and, the times when women had a lot less rights than we have now. And, I guess I have strong feelings about that question, like, because I feel like people seem to say that a lot, or, oh, the world is a lot worse. And no, I don't think it is.
I think it's interesting because I feel like there is a lot more vocalization and a lot more coming together around trauma. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not so closed off, and it is more shared within our communities and social medias, and yes, which I feel is a good thing. It's not
anything can be a tool or a weapon, right? So all of that information is, we can see all the pain and the dysfunction, but also we can connect in ways that weren't available to us.
Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. I have another question. In your work, do you notice, like, do things change kind of seasonally? Do you feel like people are seeking out healing at different times a year, or is it kind of just throughout the year?
I don't, besides a little bit of an uptick, like at the new year. I think it's a time that people reflect or want to make a new start or whatever. I don't see, I feel like any time is the moment that someone might have that experience that they're like, okay, I have to look at this. I can't just keep being unconscious anymore.
Mm-hmm. Another question I have for you is, if somebody was struggling, if people are struggling with reaching out and they may not feel safe reaching out, what is your advice for somebody to seek out help? Feeling empowered around it.
I think it depends. So when you say they don't feel safe in reaching out, because they
or just maybe they never have before, or they're not really sure what to expect, kind of what would that look like, or, I don't know. I would love for people to feel a little more empowered to reach out for help. And I don't know if there's a way to kind of give a message to people that may be on the fence about getting a little bit of.
Well, I'm hesitating because help, so often I feel like people reach out for help to the, say, traditional psychotherapy world, and it can be more harmful than it is helpful. Mm-hmm. So I hesitate to just make a blanket like, oh yeah, reach out and it's always going to be great. Mm-hmm. The system sucks. The system is not conducive. I mean, it's changing, right? But as a whole, I don't feel like the system is very conducive to healing. Even the process of looking for someone. Oh, I have to, who's on my insurance? And, let me reach out to all of these people, and half of them or more aren't even going to get back to me. And that's going to feel super shitty. And then when I do find someone, are they going to, have room for a new client, or are they even still on that panel? It can be really, really painful. So advice, start with someone that feels safe to you, right? A friend, or someone that or someone that maybe in a space like the space that the two of you provide, and get some guidance in a way that is going to feel supportive, right? In really desperate moments, like I think of a time in my own life when it was really bad. I was pretty highly suicidal, and I was desperate, and I was able to talk to someone, and she was terrible actually, but just talking to someone that day when I was in that state, who could just say, like, I see how you're feeling and I care about how you're feeling. So you like a suicide hotline, even where if someone's like, hey, I hear how you're feeling, I care about your feeling. Having, like, knowing that someone is gonna greet you with that kind of like energy. But I guess that's the thing where my concern is the psychotherapy community at large doesn't necessarily do that. But there are spaces, and I am excited too that there are more people and more access like this space, where there's this welcoming and acceptance, and that is a place to start. Can you make a suggestion, or a lot of, I don't know if you guys have this, but like, here's healing friendly resources through something that already feels safe to you. Find something that already feels at least kind of safe, and start there.
That was wonderful. Thank you. I think it also helped to normalize what a lot of people are going through and struggling alone with, feeling like, I'm hitting all these walls, like reaching out and I'm hitting all these walls. So thank you so much for going into that and sharing that reality. So a lot of people that may be like, why am I going through this? And thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And the number of times that people have told me, like, oh, I left messages for, 10 therapists and you're the only one who got back to me. It's just horrifying. Yeah. Horrifying.
So on that note, thank you for being an amazing human in this world. And thank you for, it can't be easy to be the one that answers that call. It can be challenging, I'm sure, to find not only like your like personal life that may be going on the back burner so that you can be this helpful person to so many. And so what is something for you, like, that you may kind of struggle with in your work-life balance? And what is some knowings that you would like to share with our community around work-life balance?
Work-life balance. I think maybe I have a weird way of looking at this too. Is when you say it must be hard, it's really not.
Good to know.
I heard you use the word sacred a little while ago, and to me, it's sacred to me to be part of anyone's healing journey, even if that's just answering a call, even if I'm not the therapist for you. Okay? I know I'm not going to be the therapist for everybody. I don't take insurance. But if you're reaching out to me, even if you're saying, well, I'm looking for someone who takes this insurance or whatever, I know I'm not going to be the therapist for you. Just even being allowed to have a conversation or an email exchange with someone is like it's a big deal to me. So I don't see work-life balance as really a thing, because I feel like life is life. And I am privileged to have, at least now, right, that for the last, I don't know, 15, 16 years, to have my work be this, this beautiful healing experience. But even if at least I like to think, even if I was a bartender for 15 years before I was a therapist, which was like great learning ground, even if I was still doing something like that, I would like to believe that if I kind of knew now, or knew then what I know now, that life is just life, and there's part of our lives that we get paid for. And if we separate that out, like, okay, now that goes out of life, and now that's a work and it goes over there, then that becomes like burdensome to try to balance it. And then I have to make sure, am I doing the right self-care activities? Am I getting a massage or getting my nails done or whatever? To me, it's not about the activities that we're doing. It's what's the experience on the inside. And if I'm bringing that, this is my life, this moment is where life is available to me, and whether I'm getting paid for this moment or not, it's life, then it's less effortful. And maybe I'm always looking for how to make things easier.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that perspective switch. I love that. It's like, don't separate it out, include it in, and it'll all flow.
Yeah, it's kind of weird though. Yeah. I mean, but that's okay. I'm okay with weird.
Well, I think it's one of those things it's only weird because it may feel just different, And I think we're out here breaking so many beliefs open and then reclaiming them on top of this amazing mountain that we call our human selves and this like magical life. And it's gonna look different, right? Because we're change makers.
Yeah, that's how I like to think of it.
Yeah. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, because you do have to wear your boss hat sometimes too in your line of work, what is something that you've learned that you can share with many other women out there who are also doing that entrepreneurial lifestyle?
I'm not a good business person. It's not my strong suit. I don't know. Trust the process. Like, it's going to be scary, and it's okay that it's scary, but the fear doesn't have to be in charge. There's another book I really like, Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. And it's about the creative process. And she talks about how her own journey with fear and this just decision, like, I just don't want fear to be in charge. I want a life that's more characterized by creativity than fear. So fear is going to be there, but I'm going to relate with fear in a way that's not so limiting. So just that, like, it's going to be scary, and that's fine. How do I relate with that fear? How much do I let the fear limit me?
Love that. I also love your book suggestions, and I definitely want to link them down when we post this so that people can search out these books, because I'm excited. I want to read this one that you just suggested. Go ahead. I've heard too is that fear, it's sometimes excitement gets confused with fear. And I think that when it's close to our passion, that sometimes that can be really misinterpreted within us, because that passion and that excitement and fear gets a little like intertwined, and it can feel like you want to push back when you should be pushing forward a little bit more.
Yeah, like the energy of those, and from a nervous system, from a polyvagal perspective, I like that perspective because it helps us understand that the energy is the same, whether we're looking at excitement or fear, but it feels more threatening when our nervous system goes into some threat response, right? So to your point about our passions, we may be more attached to outcomes when it's something. I don't think the passion is the problem. I think it's the attachment to outcome. And when the more passionate we are about something, the more we might be attached to an outcome around that. And so it feels threatening. Oh my gosh, if I mess this up or if I don't get this right, it feels so important. So then we go into threat response, excitement shifts to fear.
That is amazing. Thank you. Yes. That was beautifully painted. So much, Wendy.
Yeah, it's very, very well put.
But it makes sense. I'm glad I'm not just babbling in that.
No, you really painted that out. And it is sometimes like our emotions feel so big, it's hard to see them as like what's happening in our, here and here and here. And it's like, yeah, you just put it out there beautifully. Thank you.
Really graceful way to bring softening to the rigidity of having everything to be so compartmentalized or having to figure it out. I guess it's a perfect illustration of that mind body, getting out of the mind and into the body and creating that acceptance that we touched a lot on. So yeah, that was amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that insight. Very, very valuable insight.
Thank you for listening.
It's been a pleasure. We want to go into some future, Wendy. So we want to know what you are most looking forward to in the next year or two for yourself as a woman, as well as an entrepreneur and businesswoman.
My most looking forward to. Like them, I don't know, being open to the ride. I guess my own journey is looking at how I might limit myself through certain fears and being able to continue working with that, opening like some form of the bodhisattva vow is something that I think about a lot. May I continue on my own journey of awakening so that I may be of service to others in their awakening. So I guess I look forward to more opportunities to connect, to experience my aliveness, whatever that looks like. I don't know what it's going to look like.
The fear or the excitement of the unknown.
All of it, right? The other thing about the unknown, we want freedom, and that's really what I see. Another way to look at this journey: freedom versus limitation. But freedom and uncertainty are the same thing, and we long for freedom, but uncertainty often feels terrifying. The unknown feels terrifying, but the unknown and freedom are exactly the same. So that's why it's always about supporting our systems to be safe enough to step into that unknown, surrender, letting go. That's always the answer, right? Like, Marcy, you talked about the books that I've mentioned. I think about every book that I connect with, every book that I'm like, oh, this is great. They're all saying the same thing, just in different ways, from different lenses. And it's all basically boils down to trust, let go, surrender. Life is already kind of doing itself. Can we trust it more and be in harmony with it? Another one of my favorite books, Outrageous Openness by Tosha Silver. It's just, can I get out of the way?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love how we have a theme here where we have so many what seems like polarized emotions or feelings, flip sides of the coin. And I hope our audience is able to see the silver lining of choice, whether it's like freedom or uncertainty. Like it's a choice at the end of the day. And I think that's beautiful that theme is kind of following along here. So for our audience, what can you suggest, Wendy, that they can do as soon as today to cultivate in their own lives and try to find more inner peace or balance within their own lives?
As soon as today, as soon as this moment, recognize that what you're seeking is already here and always has been. Stop looking for it. Keep looking for the supports, right? Keep looking for the people and settings and experiences that help you access it. But stop looking and remember that it's already here. You're not finding it out there. What you're finding out there are ways that you can access what is always there already.
That's a gracious and beautiful reminder. Thank you for that.
Hopefully that's an appropriate answer. Is that something to do? I think it's something to do.
Absolutely. It's simplistic and powerful and accessible at all times, which is aside. The worst thing is to equip somebody with a to-do list and this feeling of exhaustion and contraction. And what if I can't find the right person or people? And the access point is always us. That is beautiful. So before we wrap up, I know that I do want to go ahead and revisit the community at large, the psychotherapy community at large, that I know you're not very fond of and has not been showing promising evidence-based results, and sometimes is more hurtful than helpful. So my original question to you was where our viewers can find you, and if there's anything else that you would personally like them to know. But if I can also add on to there, where you could suggest finding therapy that is outside of the range that we were referring to, that is not always helpful.
So I'm a member of USABP, the United States Association for Body Psychotherapy, and they have a provider directory. And so anyone who is a member of that directory is coming from a somatic perspective, which means they are going to, see healing in this kind of a way. Other sort of, I can't necessarily think of any other there's a directory site called Therapy Den, where people can search very specifically based on what they're looking for. So like if they want sacred feminine is something that I want to work with, they can put that in. Whatever their specific, like you can search really specific stuff that is unique. And the person who created that directory has people get very, very detailed, not just, my expertise is depression and anxiety and this and that. It's really detailed so people can find this feels like a fit for me. That's the first two that come to mind. How they find me. I mean, I have a website, thewellnevada.com, but I mean, I'm pretty full, but I will always, like I said, everyone that reaches out to me, I feel that sort of sacred opportunity to listen and make a suggestion. If I'm not the therapist for you, I care about what you're going through, and here's a direction I can maybe point you in. Because it'd be great if it was really easy to find that exact right fit for your healing person. It's not so much. Even buzzwords like trauma informed, like someone can say, oh, I'm doing a trauma informed therapy, but that doesn't necessarily mean, what I would consider trauma informed in a way that is, again, trauma as the way that our mind body system adapts to threat across the lifespan.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that and for providing those resources, because I do believe that they're going to be helpful and very personalized. I know when you scroll psychology today, it can become extremely overwhelming, misleading, and I'm sure you have to contact 4 or 5 different therapists and hoping that one of them reaches back out. So thank you for providing them with a different outlet to be able to have assistance in their journey. It's very, very important. Thank you for that. Wow. Anything else hanging out that you would like our viewers to know?
You're enough. That's it. We're all enough. If we just knew that in our bones, it would be simple. It's so much easier. I thank you both so much for speaking with me, listening to my ramblings, and for providing the space that you're providing for women to have some understanding and some accurate mirroring validation.
Thank you. Those words are very, very special, and there was no rambling. This was very enjoyable.
Very juicy. That was
So juicy.
great shares, Wendy. Thank you so much for your time and energy.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and wrap up for our audience. Just the things that a recap. We kind of went over healing and self-actualization, getting deeper into the body through therapy, the importance of mind, body, spirit connection, how trauma affects that connection, cultivating care, connection, acceptance to expand our own container for embodiment, psychedelic medicine as a tool to help create safety to assist in therapy work, acceptance around our seasons and cycles in life, as well as all parts of ourselves, and the importance of reaching out in places where it feels safe to our body and our system. So thank you for covering all of those topics.
You're welcome. Oh, can I add something? As you were talking, or did I miss my chance?
No,
so
please.
The other thing I want to say is therapy is not the only modality for healing, right? Healing can look all kinds of ways. Therapy is not the only way. There's many healing relationships that can exist that aren't necessarily under that umbrella of traditional therapy. So while there are traditional therapists who can provide maybe non-traditional views, there are also non-therapist helping professionals who can provide healing that's just as valuable.
I think that's important to know, because maybe some people have tried therapy, or maybe they've done somatic therapy. And I do think there's a different flavor that everybody acquires, maybe a little bit different of that flavor to be able for it to have lasting effects or impact. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. To everyone watching, thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this interview, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more great content coming your way. Until next time, stay curious and sowing with us the seeds that will impact the collective feminine. Bye-bye for now. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.